Welcome back to the In the Zone podcast. It's myself, Steve Bartle, and it's Sammy Mora. Sammy, what's up, girl?
It's things that have been happening. Not a lot of things, but things. I'm good. I'm ready for some football. Ready to be back into the grind, back into the swing of it. Ready to spend long nights at the practice facility and my weekends at Rice Eccles. So, it can't come here fast enough. So
hopefully we get Ute Zone to the point where we can just rent an apartment up on campus somewhere and just so that we can live there, because we literally live there for 6 months of the year.
Well, and also it's like, for at least for you and I, it is a trek to get back home post practice.
Traveling from Salt Lake City to Harriman and Bluffdale, it's a bit of a journey. So we could probably pay rent somewhere just by eliminating the gas bill.
Exactly.
From traveling so much.
Well, and let's start a GoFundMe. Let's start some sort of like Kickstarter or something. Get Sammy and Steve an apartment for football season.
Or maybe that's what we need to do, a GoFundMe.
Make it a full like a full year lease. They'll cover basketball and gymnastics season too. Then we're set.
Hey, there we go. Living luxury, right? Begging for luxury, for a luxury lifestyle. That's what we're all about. But we are getting back into the podcast because guess what, guys? Football is right around the corner. We got fall camp starting, I'm pretty sure next week. It's usually right after Pac-12 Media Days, and Pac-12 Media Days is this Friday. We're not going to be there.
Yeah, we're not.
Neither of us are going to be there. They're not announcing a Pac-12 media deal, so we said, what the hell? Why would we spend our time in Las Vegas for Pac-12 Media Days if there's no media deal?
In the heat, the hotter heat than here. But the only reason I would go is to just be in the same room as Deion Sanders and just listen to whatever shenanigans and tomfoolery is going to come out of his mouth. It's going to be, that's what I'm interested in, is how is Deion going to be at Media Day?
I feel I would be the type where I would ask him questions and try to be annoying almost. I feel like that. So in a way, I'm protecting myself from saying and doing something very stupid that I shouldn't.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to see his reaction to things. When the poll comes out of who they think is going to win the conference, I want to see a reaction to that from him. I just want to be in a room with him, because also I feel like him and Kyle Whittingham are on two polar opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I just want to see how the two of them would interact with each other.
I agree. I think that'll be an interesting dynamic to follow. Just Deion Sanders and his first really time with the other coaches in the Pac-12 and just how that dynamic is. I'll be interested to see it. And it would be fun to be down there, obviously, to talk to Cam and talk to Cole, who are both going to be there, talk to Kyle, obviously. We're both involved with the Across the Green NIL golf tournament. We're excited about that. I'm going to be golfing with Caleb Lomu, which I'm pretty stoked for because the kid can swing that stick. And so pretty excited about that. But yeah, Pac-12 Media Day should still be interesting. Apologies, we can't be there. Utah football told us this was the best day to do our golf tournament. So yeah, but you guys will have plenty to follow along with at Pac-12 Media Day. So, a couple other things before we get into the meat of the show. Utah's picked up a couple commitments in sports, which is what they do. They play sports, and today, basketball, Craig Smith, the head football coach of the basketball sport, picked up a commitment from Turkish forward Karahan Efeoglu. I think the G is silent. Other people think it's a hard G. I don't buy the hard G because real G's move in silence like lasagna. Everybody knows that. So it's Karahan Efeoglu. That's how I'm pronouncing it.
Until corrected.
Yeah, until corrected. But even then, I'm just going to stick to the silent G because, again, real G's move in silence like lasagna. So, yeah, sorry. It's how I was brought up. Okay.
No, I mean, hey, I'm not gonna argue with you on that one. Names sometimes letters are weird. Like when it comes to pronunciation. So
letters are weird. Letters and numbers are weird because they make words, and words are weird too. Like roads. Who? I'm just kidding. We're going down a path we should. So, anyways, back to the basketball thing. Efeoglu, good pickup for Craig Smith. Obviously, the 13th scholarship spot on the roster this season. You have to like adding a player of this caliber. He was one of the top kids in the U19 Euro leagues over there. For amongst the guys coming to play college, obviously there are other guys in that league that will move on to play professionally. So, you get a guy that can shoot it at the wing spot. That Utah's at a good size. They had a good guy that'll be in the program for a couple years at least, and a guy that they're fired up about. They beat out Wisconsin, Marquette, West Virginia. I think BYU even reached out to him as well. So a nice addition there for Craig Smith, Chris Burgess, and staff. You get that final spot wrapped up, and you can move on to different things, more important things like coaching and stuff like that. So you always
going
to
that. Spain, like
going to Spain. Yeah, planning your vacation trip
making
a little
sure
bit.
your passport's in order.
Yeah, look, like obviously they're going to be playing basketball, but come on, that's a vacation. Like you're vacationing over there.
Just like when the Red Rocks went to South Korea, like they did stuff. They did gymnastics, but they also like went and did touristy stuff. Like
enjoy yourselves.
These international trips for these athletes sound like so much fun. Please bring me on one, just one.
I know. Why can't we like bring media, the dedicated media to these things?
I saw the gymnastics SID in all the photos. I was like, what? I love
what are
Maddie.
We doing?
I was like, Maddie, why couldn't I come? But
Yeah. So like that one, football also picked up a commitment a couple days ago on Saturday, actually. Ashtin Kekahuna-Lopes out of St. John Bosco, formerly of Liberty High School in Las Vegas. Good pickup here. They love his size, his length. He's a legit 6'3". I think somebody told me 6'3.5" in cleats. So love the size, love the length. Obviously a former safety that's transitioning to the closer to the line of scrimmage. And we all have heard with guys like Devin Lloyd and others that have made that transition. So Kekahuna-Lopes is another in that mold. They're super excited about him. I think his rating is it's gonna improve as he gets into St. John Bosco and just kind of showcases his stuff. His recruitment was kind of a late blooming recruitment, wasn't on a lot of radars until this year. And so really excited about that pickup. Again, he's another guy that'll be in the program for a few years. So that way you keep the depth at that linebacker position. You keep it at a top shelf level. And you get a guy that you really like that has a lot of potential. So love that one. It's their second linebacker in the class, it gives them a little flexibility with Hunter Andrews, who's the other guy, since he's, a true athlete that can play potentially on the offensive side of the ball. So, Utah has done a good job. And, it's interesting. I know there's been, a lot of frustration and a lot of hand wringing over recruiting so far. And I think, when you look at the roster this season, and we're going to talk a lot about the roster in this episode, which we're excited about. And it's going to it'll make sense. This roster, it's loaded. There are so many guys that can contribute this season. It's crazy. And yet so many of these guys can come back next year. And so, we may not see a big class, a big recruiting class this cycle. And I think it makes a lot of sense for them to kind of approach it that way, if the focus is on retaining guys from this roster. So, we'll see. And that'll be something that we'll obviously continue to just follow and have fun with. So,
can I add this really fast, Steve?
Yeah.
it's not a restock. Like, it's not like they are starting from ground zero or square one every single season. That's always been the motive of this Utah football team, is to keep guys in the program that have the ability to develop and can be those longer term players. It's always everyone says it's reloading. You just reload, you just it's just chug and repeat. You just get the guys in there that buy into the system, that are willing to work their way up into those starting positions, and it's paid off. It's paid dividends, I think. And I think that if it's not broke, why are you going to fix it? And like, retaining, you're always going to lose guys no matter what. But looking at this Utah roster, which Steve said we'll talk about later, there's not, in my opinion, there is not a big area that I think is like you're in dire need. Like, everything's going to fall apart after this season. Right. There are building blocks in every single position group. It's just a matter of how far have those blocks been put together to be able to actually contribute on the field.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And, you look at the roster, there are only 8 seniors on the roster. Again, just a lot of guys that can return next season. And so, just not a lot of space potentially to work with. And the thing here is like, that actually kind of works to Utah's favor in a way, because they do so well when they hone in on, certain guys. That can be the case here this season, where they hone in on a select few, and then, whatever the class ends up being, you still have the transfer portal that, has now extended into spring. And so you have this year-round cycle. You have this extended period to restock the roster with whatever you need after your recruiting cycle. So it'll be interesting. And obviously, this is just us kind of speculating at this point. We could see Utah get on a nice little run and a hot streak on the recruiting trail. So we'll see. But that's kind of the fun thing about recruiting is. Things change, and so we'll see what happens. So let's get into the meat of this one, Sammy. This episode was inspired by a mailbag question that I was given from our mod, MN Ute, who asked us to rank each position based on different criteria. So I only did 3 lists. I eliminated the comfort level list, Sammy. I didn't specify that to you. So
yeah, I did 4. I did all 4. Yeah.
I was like, what's the difference? I don't see the difference between the comfort list and the vibes list, because I
took my vibes list completely different.
Oh, wow.
I took my vibes list like completely left field.
Oh,
so that's why there's 4 lists. There's 4 lists for me. The vibes for mine is like, who would I most likely hang out with, like outside of this,
Okay. Ooh.
So that's why the vibes went that way.
That'll be fun. Okay. This will be a fun one. So I only have 3. I'm really excited to hear Sammy's. And yeah. All right. So Sammy, you ready to get into this?
Yes, I apologize to anybody that I might offend with my takes, but they are mine. So just
all right, here we go. All right. So let's start first with depth and floor. We'll start from best and we'll go to worst. So Sammy, go ahead, give us your top 5.
Okay, so
depth and floor.
My number 1 would be the linebackers.
Ooh, okay.
My number 2 is the defensive ends. My number 3 is the offensive line. My number 4 is the running backs. And my number 5 is the defensive line.
Okay.
Like the D tackles. So
any positions you want to expand upon as to why you ranked them where you did?
I've always been a really big fan of the way that Colton Swan recruits linebackers and like the types of guys he brings into the program. And I think we've seen a long lineage of really great linebackers here at Utah. And I think that I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. If you look at just the guys in that room, it's just oozing talent, and it's at times it looks like the room is a little bit too full at times with just how much you have in there. And we talked about defensive end before we went on our like summer hiatus, and about how good that room is, the defensive ends, how versatile that group is, how you have different types of guys who can be used in different types of situations. And I just really like that. Like those are the two positions that if injuries happen, knock on wood they don't, I'm not like stressed about,
Okay.
So I think
Good.
that's why I went with linebacker 1, defensive end 2.
Okay. All right, perfect. So my top 5 in terms of depth and floor, I have running back 1 because you could plug a walk-on at running back at Utah, and he'll stumble upon 1,000-yard rushing season just because that's just what they do at Utah. So I have running back 1. Love the depth that they have there. Safety, I have number 2, and then linebacker I have 3, tight end I have 4, and offensive line I have 5. So just disclaimer here, I did not split up defensive line into defensive end and defensive tackle, and that has impacted the ranking here because I agree with Sammy. I love the depth at defensive end, especially assuming Vili Taufa shows up, he gets his grades and he shows up, gets the classes that he needs to pass and shows up and joins the team. That's probably the deepest unit on the roster, that defensive end. But combined with the defensive tackles, I do not have them in my top 5. So the way I kind of justified it, I look at these positions as they have to find different ways to get the depth onto the field. So, running back, obviously there's one position, and they're just loaded, but they utilize them in so many different ways. So I really like the depth there. Safety, they had to move Sione Vaki to nickel last year just to get him on the field. And it sounds like they may have to do that again this year because they have Nate Ritchie, Jonathan Hall, and Britton Allen competing for the spots. And then you still have Bryson Reeves and Jaden Pearson and Blue Stewart in that room as well. So safety, I like. Linebacker, I'm with you. Colton Swan's done a fantastic job. And again, they have to find ways to get linebackers onto the field, especially with that top 3 of Lander Barton, Karenni Reed, and Levani Demuni. And then tight end, with Brent, you almost have to, they had to move him to receiver last year just to utilize all the depth. Kind of the same thing this year. It's going to be dependent upon, a couple guys stepping up to really solidify that depth. But I like the depth there, and I have confidence that they'll do that. So that's my top 5 again: running back 1, safety 2, linebacker 3, tight end 4, and O-line 5. Sammy, give us your just finish your list, your ranking out here.
6 I have corners, 7 I have safety, 8 I have quarterback, 9 I have wide receiver, 10 I have our kicker and punter because I always count them in lists like that. And in last place for me, I have tight end.
Wow.
I'm going to explain that one here. This is the one that I know is going to be kind of like, why is Sammy saying that? Outside of Thomas and Brandt, who contributes. That's my thing. There are bodies in the room, but in terms of contribution, that's why I'm a little like concerned is like too strong of a word. I have pause is what I'll say. Just because that I just feel it because like you have bodies, you have Landon King, you have CJ Jacobson, you have all these guys that are in there, but at the same time it's like, what are they gonna do and how are they going to react to the program? So that's why I have them last. I know that people are probably like grasping their pearls, like, Sammy, why are you talking bad of our tight ends? I'm not. I'm just I just think that that's where I'm at right now.
Okay.
If we can like if we can see stuff from other guys, they'll probably shoot up this list. But prior to game 1, I'm putting them in last.
Yeah, and I think I even acknowledge that, it's going to be dependent upon guys solidifying that depth, stepping up and solidifying that depth. But just based on things that I've heard, I feel optimistic that they will do so. But I think you're totally just in ranking them where you have. I understand the logic. I follow it. So I'll go ahead. I'll wrap this up here. I have number 6, the defensive line. Again, explained it. Mm-hmm. If I split it up, defensive tackle, defensive end, it would be different. But I have defensive line 6, cornerback 7. I have QB 8, wide receiver 9, and special teams 10. So I have them dead last.
So we have 8 through 10 the same. But I split up defensive end, so that's why there's one more on mine. So yeah, I mean, pretty good that we have 3 in the same order, if you really think about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, and honestly, wide receiver, I kind of viewed wide receiver the way that you viewed tight end in the sense that, Utah has a couple guys that they know they can count on in Devon and Money, but even with, adding Micah Pittman and Emery Simmons, who have production to their name, how does that translate in Andy Ludwig's offense? Or do they pick it up? Do they pick up the offense? Those sort of questions, which obviously there's confidence that they'll be able to do that, but they still have to do it. Those questions have to be answered. And then beyond those two, a lot has to be sorted out in fall camp. So that's why I put wide receiver where I did in terms of depth and floor. A lot of guys need to step up in that room.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I saw it as well, is you have bodies again, but it's just the production numbers that are not the greatest. Yeah. There's freshmen in the I think Mikey Matthews is gonna I think he's going to contribute this season. Yeah. I just don't know in what capacity. Because you don't know, does Utah want to use just his red shirt this year and just play him for the 4 games, or do they want to play him for the entire season so that he's even better for next year? There's so many factors and there's so many things that are just with that wide receivers room that's just going to be interesting to watch this year. Just there's so many moving pieces, and it's a work in progress, I think is a good way to put it.
Okay, that's fair. All right, let's move on to the next ranking here. This one, ranking the position groups by talent and ceiling. I'll go ahead. I'll start us off here with my first 5. I ranked running back 1, linebacker 2, offensive line 3, safety 4, and defensive line 5. So I have the defensive line up a spot compared to the depth and floor. I really think the talent and defensive end is really good. I think the defensive tackle talent is really good. I just think in Utah's defensive scheme, the defensive tackles, I don't want to say they're a sacrificial position, but it's so important that they play their role and allow the linebackers to be the playmakers. So in terms of their ceiling, I think that they can play their role at a very high level. It's just that role doesn't always translate to production. So that's also kind of factored into my thinking, my thought process with the defensive line, just in terms of the defensive tackles. But again, I think the defensive ends, the depth and talent there is really, really good. It's the deepest, most athletic defensive end room that I've seen at Utah since I've been doing this and since I've been following Utah football. The running back room, I think Jaquindon Jackson is the most talented player on this roster, just raw talent. You go back to the Pac-12 championship game, you go back to the Rose Bowl, competing against teams littered with blue chip talent. Jaquindon Jackson stood out almost above them all. And so that stood out to me. And he did that only having learned the position in the months prior. So to me, he's taken that step. He's taken that leap in terms of a confidence level that he's kind of carrying himself as the man, as the guy. And, people up there in the program have a lot of optimism, have a lot of confidence that he's going to be the guy for them this season. So I think the potential is through the roof for that running back room, which combined with the depth, it's just really good. So that's my 5 again: running back, linebacker, offensive line, safety, and defensive line.
So I have almost all of those same positions in my top 5.
Okay.
My 1 through 3 is very, in my opinion, they're very close. And I think they can switch from game to game. It just depends on the situation they're put in. So I have my number 1 is defensive end again.
Yeah.
My number 2 is linebacker. My number 3 is running back. My number 4 is offensive line. And my number 5 is the defensive tackles.
Yeah. Love it.
Like I said, that defensive end, that linebacker, and those running backs, it's just it depends on what situation they're in. Is how I see it. Because you can have a game where those defensive ends step up big and they produce double-digit sacks. But then you can have a game where the running backs as a whole rush for a couple 100 yards. Same with like the linebackers. You can have games where they're getting sacks, they're getting interceptions, they're getting forced fumbles. So I think the 3 of them, those 3 groups, are the biggest wow factors for me on this roster, is a good way to put it. And I think that it just kind of depends, like I said, the situation they're put in. And I think in any given day, any of those 3 groups could be like the position group of the game kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's a great way to put it and a great way to view those 3. I think offensive line is going to be with Keaton Bills and Michael Mokofisi and Satawa Lamea. Those 3, many consider Keaton Bills the best offensive lineman, on the roster. And yet he was, Satawa Lamea was also considered there, Michael Mokofisi there. And then they have the depth and guys coming up behind them. So, guys with higher ceilings than Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. So, really exciting times at the offensive line. So, Sammy, go ahead. Give us your next little bit, your 6 through 11.
I have safety at 6, quarterback at 7, tight end at 8, corner at 9, wide receiver at 10, and kicker and punter at 11.
Okay. All right. So to finish my list, I have cornerback 6, tight end 7, wide receiver 8, quarterback 9, special teams 10.
I mean, I think the thing is for me with wide receiver, again, it's like you have talent. Because I know we always talk about stars kind of don't really matter at the end of the day. I think I just want to see a season where Utah has a wide receiver or 2 that are just tearing it up and having massive numbers. But until I can like actually see it and like it actually happens, I will always have hesitation with the wide receiver group. And I know that's really bad for me to say. That's like really bad. But at the same time, I'm an analytical type of girl, and I want to see numbers match up to what we have, like talent wise. I don't know if that made any sense, but
sure. No, with my ranking, the 2 positions, cornerback and tight end, lose arguably the top 2 talents from the roster last season in Dalton and Clark. And so I like the depth and some of the talent that they've brought in the recruiting class. I don't think the tight end room has the same ceiling this season, but again, I like the depth that they have there. So, and then again, you kind of subbed up wide receiver. It's kind of a hodgepodge of wide receivers.
Yeah.
But I think they've kind of found this maybe a little bit of a formula where, you hone in on 1 or 2 high school receivers, high level high school receivers, and then you bring in guys that have production to their name, guys that are, seniors and juniors that just want to win. And it's really helped the depth at wide receiver. So, we'll see, but
and also with Whitted, how is this wide receiver core going to react to him? That's another thing that I've been thinking a lot about is you always have the growth spurt between the first season with the coach and the second season. We saw it last year. with Ellis's group, we saw the growth. We saw some growth with the running backs as well. But like, I think the bigger measurement of how good this wide receiver core is, like at the depths of it, is going to be the growth that they make from this season to next season under Whitted.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's where I want it, because you always have that growth spurt. So
yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next list. And to be fair, I combined the next two lists into one list because I associate comfort level with vibes, whereas Sammy can keep the two distinguished. So I have one list, and we're going to label this the comfort level list because Sammy has a separate list based entirely on the vibes, which I'm excited to hear about. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about the positions that we are most comfortable with. Sammy, go ahead. Give us your 1 through 5.
I'm sounding like a broken record. Defensive end 1, running back 2, linebacker 3, offensive line 4, and then surprisingly tight end at 5.
Okay. I'll give my 5. I have running back 1, safety 2, defensive line 3, linebacker 4, and offensive line 5. I have a very high comfort level with the safety position. I heard great things about both Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki. I know people are kind of questioning what are we doing with Sione Vaki since he played nickel last season. He is not a nickel that played nickel last year. He is a safety that played nickel. He played out of position. He's just that good that he made it look easy. So he's
fresh off a mission. Fresh off a mission too. Like let's add that in
freak. The kid is a freak. He is going to be a 3-year player, and then he's going to move on and cash a paycheck on Sundays. He is that good. So enjoy him while you can. Sione Vaki is my big breakout player of the year. I have a great deal of comfort because, behind Cole and behind Sione, you've got a guy that played in 2020 with Nate Ritchie. Then you bring in, Jonathan Hall, who seems to be the next Sione Vaki, who is a true freshman that's just kind of making plays in camp. And, I'm sure the coaches want to see it a little bit more in fall camp, but there's a good positive buzz around Jonathan Hall. And then, you add in a transfer in Britton Allen. And again, like I mentioned, you got other guys still in that room that we won't even talk about, but just love the potential in that room. I think Sione Vaki is going to surprise people at safety. And so really excited about that group there. So I have a very high comfort level with that safety room. So Sammy, go ahead.
Can I just add this? Because I know people are probably like, Sammy, why did you have tight end at 5 in your comfort level, but 11 in your depth? It's because you have Brant Keithy and Thomas Yasmin still. Because if you don't have those two, or at least one of those two, I think the comfort level just plummets. But you have both of them. So I'm comfortable. Sure. But it's just the guys behind them that give me pause until I can put eyes on film and see game live snaps. That's why they are where they are.
Okay.
But to round out my list, I have defensive line 6, safety 7, quarterback 8, corner 9, kicker 10, and wide receiver 11.
Okay. I have, for my 6 through 10, I have tight end 6, cornerback 7, quarterback 8, wide receiver 9, special teams 10.
But Cole Becker can drill one, dude. We saw them.
Yeah, we did. I'm much like you. I want to see it on game day. So True. We'll see. Wide receiver, this could be, man, somebody told me this is probably, I don't want to say the most volatile, but there's optimism about this group, but that could change in a couple weeks as we get 2 weeks into camp. So, we'll see. And then, tight end, still have a great deal of comfort. That group is going to produce. Cornerback, have a high level of comfort there. Yeah. It's really hard because you rank these, and some of these are really low. Like quarterback, I have ranked low in all of these, but I still feel good about. it's about the quarterback room.
I'm fine with the quarterback room. I think there's lots of talent. I think that everyone is like, I would be comfortable with like almost anyone in that room taking snaps. But at the same time, it's like outside of Cam, it's just like, well,
you just don't know.
You don't know. You can only watch so many spring practices and see like 20 minutes of nothing. So
yeah, and even with Cam, like my thinking with him is, he's not the most naturally talented quarterback. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the most athletic. He just has this it factor about him that you can't really quantify. You can't really rate it and rank it at 24/7 Sports. He's just a winner. And so he doesn't need to be the most talented. Obviously, the depth, there's just no experience behind Cam, so you can't really rank the depth all that high. The comfort level, I probably should have put quarterback high. But with Cam and the injury, you have to see it. So quarterback obviously is impacted a lot here by Cam's injury. But I have I still feel really good about Cam. He has that it factor when he's out there. I just think, he just has this knack for making plays that you can't always, I don't want to say you can't always,
it's not quantifiable.
Right. It's just, he just has this knack. And so it's just there.
That's the word you're looking for, is swag.
So you can't, yeah. So that's my thinking with Cam and the quarterback room. So, Sammy, you finished your list here. Okay. Go ahead. Give us your best vibes. I'm very interested to hear this.
So this is vibes based on how likely would I like hang out with that position group as a whole, outside of like if this wasn't like a football related, like if this wasn't like a job. Number one is the running backs. I just think they are a lot of fun.
Okay.
Makai, JJ, Jalen. I vibe with that. Number two is corners, specifically because of Miles Battle. I love his little Utah updates. You can't tell me that those aren't funny.
They've been funny.
They've been funny. I do vibe with that. Number three is the defensive line. Junior is one of the funniest people that would be. That would be going out to dinner with him and just seeing what he did. That would be hilarious.
Yep. I agree with that. He would be my number one overall in the best vibes.
Defensive end would be 4, wide receiver 5, tight end 6, offensive line 7, quarterback 8, kicker 9, linebacker 10. 7. Linebacker 10 because they are business. They do have fun, but I feel like they are very business oriented. And then safety 11, because I also feel like the safeties are very like business.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here, off the cuff. Number one, Junior Tafuna.
Not the defensive line, just Junior.
Just Junior Tafuna, because that's all you need from the defensive line group. Number 2, offensive line, because offensive linemen are the best humans in the whole world.
True. The video of Keaton Bills from the gymnastics football crossover.
I'm shocked you didn't rank them higher based on that alone.
I know. Well, you can't tell me that, like, if you went out to dinner with the tight ends, that wouldn't be fun.
Thomas is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
See?
Thomas
and the
is funny.
The wide receivers seem like a vibe also. So that's why I moved them up. But that's the vibe.
Yeah.
That's my vibe reader.
For me, it's Junior Tafuna, it's offensive line, it's cut list. That's it. That's all I need. I'm just kidding.
No one else.
I'm just kidding.
No one else makes the vibes.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Logan Fano is up there. So, all right. Defensive line is up there. But yeah, love the vibes list. That was fun. So, okay. Let's wrap this up. We've got one last question from MNU that he posted in that mailbag thread. And so, Sammy, I pose to you, what are the biggest areas of focus for Utah in fall camp?
I have 2. So I'm going to say my first one is I like getting everybody I know everyone's already probably on the same page, but getting those who weren't able to go in spring and have been cleared this summer back out on the field, back with the team, back to football basically, getting them meshed with the newer pieces of the team, like Cam with the new wide receivers, Demooney in with the defense. I think that's the big thing for me. I don't doubt that Utah's not going to have the chemistry is not going to be there by the time the first game comes around, but that's always something you kind of have to think about when you have transfer players coming in, you have freshmen coming in that didn't practice in spring, and you had some key starters that were out. But then my other thing is, who is going to play nickel? That's my biggest like position specific thing that they need to like. I'm what focused on is who's playing nickel, because we saw a lot of Elijah Davis at nickel in the spring and he looked good. But there, like you've already mentioned, Steve, there's plenty of other guys in that room that can play at that nickel position. So those are my two things.
Okay. I've got a few things here. The biggest area of focus for Utah in fall camp, number one, it's every year staying healthy, keeping these guys fresh. Man, it's so crazy. You know, I was on with Spence Checkitz on the drive today, and he asked me a question. Like, obviously, we know the roster, but who are going to be guys that can contribute this year that are new to the roster? And it's crazy because you think like, there are a lot of returning guys, a lot of guys with experience coming back, but then there are also all these new guys that are going to be counted on to contribute. And so it's Utah has a roster, it feels like, finally, where, you know, they have a two deep on offense and defense that they can utilize and rotate a lot of bodies through to keep guys fresh. Yep. And that will be very important in fall camp, especially. So I think staying healthy, keeping guys fresh throughout camp will be a big priority. Next big priority, and this is probably a 1B to the staying healthy, 1A to the 1A of staying healthy. But to me, getting pass protection sorted out and sorting out the offensive line in general. We know, you know, the offensive line, it's going to include Keaton Bills and Michael Mokofisi and Satawa Lamea. It's likely going to include Falcon Kamatule, and then, you know, still have to figure out who's it going to be at center. So you have to sort out the offensive line because you want pass protection to be clicking on at a very high level. And then you also need the run game to be clicking and firing on all cylinders. So need to sort out the offensive line. That's first and foremost. And they have a good idea of who the guys are going to be. It's just figuring that out in the first week or so of camp and kind of finalizing how they're feeling about it. Next big thing is reintegrating Cameron Rising, like you said and alluded to, Sammy, kind of getting him in back, you know, building a rhythm, building a chemistry with the receivers again, doing that. So that's going to be important, getting the other guys, just building that chemistry with them, which leads me to my next point, sorting out the depth and hierarchy at wide receiver and even tight end, as well as nickelback. So you got to figure out what you're going to do at nickelback, and that can be a variety of different things. It's an important position because Utah likes to have, you know, that nickel on the field against those pass-heavy teams. But with the depth that they have at linebacker, we'll see a lot of 4-3. We may even see a lot of 3 safety looks again this year, just kind of depending on personnel matchups, but they got to figure out who's it going to be at nickel, that true nickel, that Javelin Guidry type nickel. They got to figure that out. Got to figure out what you have at tight end behind Thomas and behind Brandt. I have a lot of optimism and confidence. Dallin Bentley and Landon King can provide some depth there as well as Mickey Sugaturunga continuing the switch there. And then with wide receiver, like I said earlier, beyond Vele and Money and even Mikey Matthews, I'll throw in there. You got to figure out where and how Micah Pittman fits in, where and how Emery Simmons fits in. Who do you have beyond those 5? Does Makai Cope take that step this year? Is Sidney and Banasaur ready to contribute this season? is he healthy and ready to go? What do you have beyond those guys as well? Manir McLean making the switch back from tight end. Is he going to click with Alvis Whitted and really kind of find his footing here at wide receiver again? So a lot to sort out. That's kind of the big things for me, the big areas of focus. And so, it'll be a lot of fun because camp starts again next week. And then before you know it, we're going to be, at the first week of the season. And then it'll be the bye week. And then it'll be the Pac-12. And then,
now we're back. And then we're back. Right. And then we're back to where we are right now.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
Steve, I'm going to throw this question at you since we both agree that nickel is a position that needs to be figured out relatively quickly. Who do you see as the leading horses in the stable for that position? Because I still go back to Elijah Davis, just because of what we saw from spring. But who do you think are the names to keep an eye out for nickel?
Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden, and Elijah Davis. Those are the three guys going to be in the mix at nickel. They loved what they saw in Teo Johnson the first couple weeks of spring ball. He's so smart. That his time playing quarterback in high school actually really helped him kind of picking up on things, at that spot. And so they love his athleticism, super twitchy type athlete, which they love at that position. Smith Snowden is coming in with arguably the highest floor of the recruits coming in this season. Maybe not Spencer Fano. He's also an incredibly high floor, but Smith Snowden is going to come in and be ready to compete right away. So, those are going to be the guys. And then Elijah Davis had a fantastic spring camp. And so, those three are going to be in the mix for that job. And it'll be super interesting to follow along in fall camp and see who kind of emerges in that spot.
Yeah.
All right. So Sammy, any last thoughts before we say goodbye? This was kind of a long one.
This was a long one. I love answering questions from the board in this manner. I think it's fun. It's a fun way to connect with you guys on the board. I'm excited. I'm excited to be back at practice. I'm excited to see just football, what tomfoolery and shenanigans happen this season, in like a positive way. But I'm looking forward to it. Summer went by really fast, but there's no season that's better than football. So
word to that. That's a good note to end on. So with that being said, myself, Steve Bartos, Sammy Mora, this has been the In the Zone podcast, signing off.